Is it working?
Wow, no, we're rolling. We're live. Check, check, mic check. We are live back in the studio again.
So happy.
And welcome to No Degree, Just Experience podcast. And wow, what an experience I had over the last few months for sure. So in case you're just joining us, or maybe if you were following us before, we only got a couple episodes into this podcast.
Literally two.
And literally, it was on the day we posted the second podcast that I came down with what has been hands down the weirdest experience of my life.
I know, it was tough. It was rough, guys. Tough and rough.
For those who don't know, I came down with Bell's palsy the day we posted episode number 2.
Yeah, literally.
And that was the freakiest experience ever. For those who don't know what Bell's palsy is, it is partial facial paralysis. So that means that literally just half of your face is completely paralyzed and the other half is just doing its own thing. It's the weirdest feeling in the world. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what that was like and what the road to recovery and stuff was for anybody who was interested in that. Because I know for whoever was viewing and stuff, that was kind of a shock. It was a shock for me for sure.
Yeah,
so
for both of us.
Let's start with what had happened.
What happened?
So you were on a job. You were on a makeup job at a wedding. Mm-hmm. And I was watching the kiddos. So we have 2 kids, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And as I was making them food, I started noticing my eye felt really dry and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was going to the bathroom and I was looking at my eye and I was trying to check out my face and stuff. And I noticed that I could close one eye and keep the other one open, but I couldn't do the opposite. I couldn't close one eye and keep it open. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I was a little bit freaked out about that and stuff. I was like, this is kind of a weird feeling. I've never experienced this before. So I set up a quick little teledoc appointment and the doctor asked me some questions about my symptoms and stuff, what they were. It was mostly just the eye thing at that point. And he was like, well, could just be need sleep or something, or just keep an eye on it. Doesn't seem to be raising any red flags or anything to him. So he didn't give me, any recommendations, any big deal. He was like, just keep an eye on it. About 10 minutes later, as I finished cooking the kids' breakfast and I was eating myself, I realized that my tongue was numb on the right side.
Oh my gosh. And
at that point, I was like, okay, eye's doing a weird thing, tongue is numb, and I was wondering, could this possibly be I was thinking immediately, is this a stroke thing?
Yeah.
So I got on the phone and I was looking up symptoms of a stroke. And
don't you WebMD'd yourself?
I absolutely, yes, I WebMD'd myself. Because, all right, first of all, I'm the kind of guy where whenever something goes wrong medically with me, I am like most men out there where I'm like, I don't need to go see a doctor. I'll be fine.
Totally.
It's okay. The one exception to that in my mind is a stroke.
Yeah, for sure.
Because with a stroke, it's very much it's a time thing. Mm-hmm. So you have a limited amount of time.
Or a heart attack.
So, yeah, heart attack too. So I looked up symptoms of a stroke and I saw things like, hey, you should go check yourself out, go in the mirror and smile in the mirror and see if your face looks symmetrical. And I go and smile in the mirror and it was like,
oh my God.
I was like, that's not normal. That's not normal.
Oh my God.
That's a bad sign. And because I had the kids with me, immediately my head went to if I stroke out right now, the kids aren't going to be able to do anything.
They're not going to
know. Stuck in the house, they can't get out or anything.
Oh my gosh.
Fortunately, we had a family member who lives in the same apartment complex as us, our aunt. And I went straight to her with the kids. I was like, girls, come on, get your shoes on, let's go. And we walked across and I brought the kids to her. I was like, I need to go to the doctor now. And I also know that you're not supposed to drive when you're having a stroke.
Yeah.
But the urgent care is 5 minutes up the road. And I was like, judging by where my face was, I was like, I think I can make it.
Oh my gosh, Charlie.
I know. So I go to the urgent care and it's funny that people complain about when you go to emergency rooms and stuff, the wait line is forever. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But if you ever want to get checked out without having to do any kind of a wait, just go in and say you're having a stroke. They didn't even do paperwork on me. It was I think I'm having a stroke. Right in.
Yeah.
So I go in there and they're checking me out and stuff. And I guess whatever my symptoms were, it was so stroke-like, including my heart rate was really elevated, which is another sign. But that was probably just due to anxiety and stuff about feeling I was having a stroke. So they,
Mind you, pause, you texted me on the way to the emergency room.
No, it was when I was there at the urgent care office. So as they were checking me out. So I knew that you were at a wedding.
Well, I knew you don't call me at all, really.
Yeah.
If you know that I'm working, you really don't call me. So you called me, and I'm like, I'm in the middle of doing a bridesmaid's makeup, and I'm like, oh, my husband's calling. That's weird. I'm so sorry. Like, can I get this? My husband, rarely do I take phone calls while I'm working. And, oh, no, actually, I didn't answer your call. I said, hey, I'm working or whatever. I'm busy.
Yeah.
And then you texted me.
Yes.
And you were like, I just brought myself to the ER because I think I'm having a stroke. And I'm like, okay. And I'm trying not to, like, stress out. But at the same sense, I'm like, if he's texting me and calling me and he's already there, then he's good.
Yeah.
Like,
also,
to me, I was like, okay, you're in a safe space. So it was not... Like, what is the point in freaking out? I was like an hour away in the middle of,
the first thing
it
I
was
said
weird
in
how
the text,
calm I was
Yeah.
in the midst of all of that.
I mean, in the text, I said, hey, don't freak out.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
want you to know, I think I might be having a stroke, and I took myself to urgent care.
Yeah.
And so they checked me out, and they couldn't make a determination either. And so you received that text.
And then I called you.
Yeah.
I said, hey, I need to call my husband. I'm so sorry. And I was actually doing her makeup while talking to you. But so I knew that I was talking to you. You sounded fine. You sounded coherent. Your speech wasn't slurred or anything. So I was like, I think you're okay.
I was already with medical professionals. I wasn't at the house like going, hey, I think I'm having a stroke. Like, I wasn't by myself. So I was already with medical professionals and stuff. And fortunately, we had family members that were around us too. So
Yeah.
at the urgent care, they couldn't make a determination. They didn't have the scanning machines needed for, like, I don't know if it was a CT or an MRI, something like that. So they actually told me, hey, you need to go to the emergency room, actually. Closest one is the one in Memorial City. Do you have someone to drive you? How did you get here? I said, well, I drove myself. And they're like, yeah, don't do that again.
Yeah, no.
Okay. So I called a family member, and he took me over to the emergency room. And when I got into there, they checked me out there. Again, you go in there, you say you had a stroke. I have, like, the written up stuff from the urgent care to, like, show, hey, this was my symptoms. They scanned me. These are my signs, or whatever, the medical checks, heart rate. And when they checked me out there, they couldn't tell if it was a stroke or Bell's palsy.
Gosh, that's scary.
So they were like, had a couple of them, like, at the intake center, like, they called another doctor over, hey, what do you think? And they go, I don't know, let's just call it for a stroke. Like, let's err on the side of caution. And I was like, yes, please.
Yeah, yeah.
So they called that for a stroke. And then I ended up going, and it was like a long day after that. I had to get scanned 2 different times just for them to make the right determinations. And
So at that point, did you have any other, like, it just stayed in your face, or did it go to your arms, or, like, what was the... Did it just stay in your face?
it was just, so that was the interesting part, is it was just in the face.
Okay.
But I guess, like, the amount of mobility I still had at the time is why they couldn't call it, because, like, it wasn't completely indicating of stroke or Bell's palsy. The elevated heart rate seemed like stroke. But then, like, I still had the strength in all of my arms. I wasn't numb anywhere else. It was literally just, I was actively losing mobility in the right side of my face.
Oh my gosh, baby.
So after a couple scans and stuff, a few hours went by, they came back and they had a definitive answer that, hey, you have not had a stroke. This is Bell's palsy. And so then I'm like, okay, what do I do about that now? And they basically just said, okay, so you need to take an antiviral, you need to take these prednisone pills, and then that's pretty much it. Then you just wait it out. After that, it's just a time game. And so my mom ended up picking me up from the emergency room, then brought me home. You came back and met with me. And after that, it was just a bit of a journey to get there.
Because, like, we looked it up, and it was like a 6 to 8 week recovery or something.
Yes.
Like, it was like a 30% chance it was going to stay that way.
Yeah.
So
that's the scary part. Like 75% is like full recovery. 30% is like at lasting effects. And like a smaller percent is like, it could take a long time for some people.
My gosh. I came home and I was just, what's wrong with your face? I'm so sorry. And I felt so helpless. There was nothing that I could do to help you get out of that or help you recover faster. And every day I know we were like, okay, let me see. let me see, are you getting improvement? And it just took forever. But explain to them like what you found out about like the nerves and stuff. Like if you were, because some people were giving us advice. Apparently this is super common.
Yeah, way
So
more common
many
than I
people
thought.
came out of the woodworks like, oh, I had that in college, or my aunt had it, or my sister, I had, you know.
Yeah,
and I'm
either-
like, wow. And it was all like pretty young people.
Mm-hmm.
And first off, it is caused by stress. So that was a trigger,
That
I
was
think.
probably
Because
part
at
of
that
it.
time, you know, I think we had a lot going on.
We had a lot going on. We were in the midst of like just some of the
So
most
much.
exciting stuff we had happening.
And then, like,
And we were just busy, like for
Yeah.
our own freelance stuff, for my regular day job, podcast, like
and everybody was telling
extra
you,
clients.
slow down, Charlie. It's, you gotta just slow down.
Yeah.
And we are just, we don't know how to slow down. But anyway, so everybody was coming out saying, you know, they've had experiences, they know somebody that had it, and they were giving us like advice, like, okay, well, you can chew gum to like work those muscles,
Yeah.
because, you know, even though you can't feel it, you know, you still need to work it out, because it's almost like muscle atrophy if you don't, right? Is that kind of like the theory?
That's one of the theories and stuff.
Okay.
So basically what they told me about it is like what it does is it's caused by some kind of virus that's dormant in your system, like a chickenpox virus that literally just stays there. So when you get chickenpox or something like that, that stays in your system your entire life, but it's dormant. So enough stress triggers that virus to become
Yeah.
active again. And what it ends up doing is it swells, it inflames and swells up the muscles around a nerve that's like right behind your ear. And that nerve controls all the muscle movement in your face. So it's literally like kinking a garden hose essentially, and just it takes away all the nerve endings and stuff. So it's not a stroke, but it actually acts similar as a stroke, because when that happens though, it does end up killing the nerves inside your face. And so that time it takes is how much time it takes for those nerves to grow back.
That's wild.
So that's the hard part. It's like there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do. And it's the weirdest feeling in the world to be like doing things like moving your eyebrow or smiling, things you don't have to think about.
Yeah.
And yet one side of your face does it and the other side, totally
Yeah,
nothing.
and I just remember like in the first weeks you had a really tough time, like eating, because, you know, it's like, you know, like when you have dental work done and your mouth is numb and you can't really chew and you're just like this, and I'm like, you poor guy. I was just like,
It was
oh my
rough
God.
because
So
you try
sorry.
like eating and like you don't realize like how much those muscles like keep food from just
Yeah.
falling out of your mouth. So I'd be eating and food would just fall out. I would drink and drink would just fall out. Another horrible thing was my sense of taste had changed and I could not taste salt.
Yeah, I
That was the
remember that.
flavor that I lost was salt. So everything that I ate just tasted unsalted, and that was terrible. Nothing tasted right.
Yeah.
And then, you know, also there's a thing of like you can't hide it or anything. So the other part that was just really bad timing, not bad timing, it was very unfortunate, was that on a Friday is when I came down with the Bell's palsy. The very next day on Saturday, I had to shoot a wedding for a friend who's a staff member at my church. And so the wedding wasn't just for like, you know, me knowing the bridal party. The attendees were also lots of people that I knew as well.
Oh my gosh.
And so I had to like walk up, and the very first thing I had to do was go up there and be like, hi, I just want you to know that this side of my face isn't working.
Yeah, and you
So
could
I had-
barely talk because
I
it was
could
like
barely talk.
fresh.
It was very fresh and like,
You
yeah,
could barely talk.
very numb. So it was very difficult to communicate and stuff, which is really hard to shoot a wedding like that,
Yeah.
because I'm a very like energetic person. And when you're shooting a wedding and stuff, you want to try to keep the energy up, and you got to be a little bit entertaining and make everyone feel positive and stuff. And that's really hard to do with half a face.
I know.
So-
I felt so bad for you.
Yeah, it was a rough
I'm
time.
just like that's the thing is like anybody that knows you, like you are so like animated and like with your hands and telling stories and laughing and like so outgoing, and like just seeing you go through that like really broke my heart, because you're just like, I just want to hide.
I've never felt like that before ever either. So
Yeah.
with any other like ailment that you get, any other like disease or virus or situation, like it's easy to hide things that are happening to you internally. Like you might be feeling something, but you can try to hide it. You put on a brave face and stuff. But when you only got half a face, you can't put on a brave face. It was
Yeah.
so evident that there was something wrong. And that was a very unique thing to me, is to like not be able to like put on a front, not being able to hide something. Like
Yeah.
when I would talk to somebody, it was there. So that was a
Yeah.
really unique experience to me, was like having to just deal with it. And then for my day job too, like I do video interviews with people where I'm sitting next to the camera and I'm having to talk to them and ask them questions. And that's a really weird feeling too, because like you don't want to distract a person's like ideas, their flow when they're talking and stuff. And it just feels like
Yeah.
it's really hard to not be distracting when like they're looking at you, but they really can't help but think like, man, this feels weird because half of his face
Yeah.
is not moving.
I know.
So it was definitely rough. And then also, like, we put a pause on the podcast because I could not talk. The longer I would talk, the more messed up my speech would become.
Like, because your face would get tired of like trying to overcompensate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then my words would really get like mumbly and stuff. So I couldn't keep it going. I was like, I'm not going to do a podcast like that. So
Yeah.
we took a pause from that and stuff, and took a pause on things outside of my 9-to-5 job as well, just to kind of give us a break. And people were joking with me lots and like, hey, you need to slow down. You need to like not stress and stuff. And I was like, well, here's the thing. When your job, your hobby, and your passion are all the same thing, which
Yeah.
for me is camera work and video work, it's really hard to find that line of like, okay, what is work and what is relaxation and what is fun, what is job? Like it's very blurred
What is
lines.
decompression?
Right. Because
Yeah.
other people, like there's lots of guys who like they'll work their 9-to-5 job, then they'll go golfing on the weekend. But I don't play golf. I play with cameras.
Yeah, yeah.
So anything I do is like my relaxing time is very similar to my job, where like I have a camera in my hand and I'm like playing with camera settings and things like that, or trying to learn more things about it. So it definitely was kind of a hard thing for me to learn how to pull back on. And then projects and stuff, like you take on projects, not because it's like, oh, I got to take on other projects. You take on projects because you're excited about them. You're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, this will be a great story. This will be a great video. This will be a great thing. And so you take on all these extra things, but before you know it, you don't realize that you're being stressed. And I think the big part of where mine came from is realizing my actual limitations, having to realize my limitations when it
Yeah.
came to where my time goes. Because I think before I came down with Bell's palsy, I was trying to feel like I was getting 2 days out of one. I would wake up as early as I could. I would stay up as late as I could in between my regular job and like spending time with my family. Like, you know, I would do like editing and stuff on top of that. And I was really burning the candle at both ends. And I was enjoying it at the same time. Like it was great, but I know I was tired. I was burning myself out and stuff. It's a
Yeah.
weird feeling where you take a pause and you're not doing something and you kind of feel like, man, I should be doing something right now. It's that hustle culture and stuff. So, yeah.
I feel like that was nature's way of like, you need to sit down. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
pretty
like,
much.
oh my God, I'm just so grateful and thankful it wasn't a stroke
I know.
or a heart attack. Like, that's so scary. But I was like I said, when I got that news, I tried to stay calm. And I was like, he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. I was just trying to like keep my faith up. And when I knew you're okay and it's something that could get better, I'm like, okay, now we just got to ride the wave and like wait for it to pass.
Yeah.
But then we were kind of juggling with, 4 weeks go by and it's still no progress. So, and we had and I want to thank everybody who was like constantly checking up on us. Like, how's Charlie doing? Is he doing okay? Whatever, like that meant so much to us because, we just were dealing with it by ourselves and that was just so scary. And so we really appreciate everybody looking out for us.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, 4 weeks go by and I'm like still getting DMs from family and friends and I'm like, it's still the same. Like,
It's
I don't
exact
know.
same.
Like, I don't know if we're just but then also coming to terms like, well, if we are in that 75 percentile, we just have to deal with, like, we have to accept it.
Yeah, that
And
was the
so
scary
you were
part.
kind of learning like a new way of life almost and trying to navigate like, all right, well, this is my thing and it's going to be with me and I'm okay with it. Just keep going. So I think after probably like a month, you felt like, all right, well, if this is it, we got to adjust.
That's exactly it. Because like I was very much on par with that, mine's or the whatever the benchmark is. Let's say it takes around 6 weeks. I think it wasn't until the 6 week mark that I saw any improvement at all. And I think the very first improvement I saw was like I could move like my lip a little bit, like I could smile a little bit more, or like I could close my eye just a little more. That didn't happen until week 6.
Yeah.
So all the way up until then, like imagine like 5 weeks and you're thinking like, okay, is anything going to happen? Like 5 weeks of the exact same, just nothing, just the whole
Nothing.
side of your face, nothing moves.
But I think when you're like, all right, I give up. Like that's
Yeah.
when we started seeing improvement. We're like, whoa, okay, all right.
I mean, I was telling myself like, even if it's like this for the rest of my life, I'm still going to keep doing the work that I want to do. I'm not going to let it hold me back. And fortunately, shortly after that is when I started getting some movement back.
Yeah. And we were just so excited to get like a little twitch in the cheek or like, a little raise in the eyebrow, like a centimeter. I'm like, it's moving. I think it's moving.
It's
like
coming
it's
back.
coming back.
So
So like
exciting.
we just like took those little wins in stride and just held on. And I'm so glad you're so better. And it's still not 100%, but
I'd say
you
I'm
can't
about
tell.
97%. There's a little section like right here on my face where like I can tell when I like smile or laugh real big that this side doesn't move as much.
Yeah.
But that just kind of is what it is. I think one of the big milestones was when I started getting comfortable like kind of making fun of it or teasing about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like at some point, like it was an emotional roller coaster I've never been on before in my life. Like I've never felt that insecure about something before. I've never felt like I just wanted to hide
Yeah.
before. In fact, when I was shooting that wedding the very next day, I spent so much time during the reception just trying to avoid people that I knew because I didn't want to like have to. My face was already tired. My speech had gone downhill so much over the course of a 10-hour day. I couldn't talk or anything. And so I just couldn't wrap my head around like, I'm going to go talk to all these people that I know and they're going to notice that half my face isn't moving and I have to explain it and stuff. And I just wanted to hide. And I'd never felt so close to tears before. So anyone else who is going through this, like the emotional roller coaster you go through from the videos and stuff that I watch, that's just like something you're going to go through that people who haven't experienced it are not going to fully understand. I've never been able to grasp like what I felt in that whole experience. But whenever we got to the point where we could just laugh at it, I remember there was a car ride where I was in the driver's seat. And so the right side of my face was the numb side, and that's the side that you looked at.
Yeah, because
And
you were driving.
I forget what I had said, but I made some joke and like I was smiling huge, like laughing to myself, but you looked at me and this side of my face was just completely blank, and so you didn't realize I was joking, and then you see me slowly turn and it goes from straight face to and like a turning motion, just like
I was like, are you laughing? You don't think that's funny? And he's like, no, I'm laughing like this. I was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. And then there was, oh my God, yeah. I think at some point we were just like, it's just like the jokes came out naturally.
Yeah.
And there was like no intention to ever make fun of you. Heck no. Like that was never my intention. But I remember one time too, we were telling the kids to, like, I was kind of bribing them a little bit and I kind of like winked at Charlie and I'm like, he's like, what am I supposed to do with that?
like you're winking at me. What am I supposed to do with that? I can't. All I can do is close them.
I was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. And I'm like, and as soon as I did it, I'm like, I'm sorry. But that was like our normal. Like we had already been through like 5 weeks of it, 4 weeks of it. So it was like becoming normal. So I was just like doing the regular things,
We were
and
just
I'm just
joking
like,
about
oh
stuff
my
at that
gosh.
point.
Yeah. Okay, so tell them like how the kids reacted when you came home from the ER.
Oh my gosh. So our kids are just like, sometimes they seem really similar. Other times they're like polar opposites. And this was like a great example of that. So it wasn't when I came home from the ER. It was when I came home from church the very first Sunday.
Okay.
So I'd worked a full morning and I did not realize this. Okay, so for anyone who needs to know for Bell's palsy and stuff, you don't realize that when you can't squint, on a sunny day, that hurts like crazy. So when I was driving home from church, it was like bright high noon sun outside.
Yeah.
And I was driving home and like I couldn't squint my right eye and my right eye was just killing me. And so I looked up earlier on like things that people normally do when they get Bell's palsy, and something people said was they get an eye patch. So I thought, okay, I'll stop and pick up an eye patch for my eyes so that, the sun doesn't bother me, which is dumb because sunglasses exist. But I don't know why. I didn't think, I'll get some sunglasses. I thought, I need an eye patch. So I went and got an eye patch, and I was wearing it on the drive home, and sure enough, that helped the headache and stuff go away.
Yeah.
And so I knock on the door when I get home, and our older child opens up the door and just looks at me with horror, just like,
What happened?
yeah, just like as my face with the eye patch on. And that she's right at the door. And then at the back of the house, the younger one looks up and goes, "Yay, he's a pirate!" And that was just the funniest moment. He's a pirate.
At least support.
Yeah, definitely support. They were so excited about that.
We're so supportive.
So supportive.
But I'm glad you're better now.
It was a big journey. I'm very, very much glad I'm better now. Like this was
Just thank God it wasn't anything worse.
Yep.
And if any of you experience it or know somebody that's going through it now, or
Yep.
you can always reach out to us and we can talk you through it or give you advice or just encourage
Speaking
you.
of that, what's crazy is that we had never really talked to anybody before this who had it. And when it happened, people started coming out and telling us. But I'd never met someone that I knew that had it. And literally the day, I would say the week that I started getting better, a family member of ours came down with it. And that was wild. And they contacted us, and I got to share my experiences with them and kind of helped them.
Walk through it.
And also shared with their spouse as well, and things like, hey, you got to let them ride through these emotions and stuff. Be encouraging, but not overly encouraging. You have to validate the feelings that they're having through this. I was able to give them advice and stuff through that too, which was just the craziest timing. But that felt really good, knowing I just finished going through something.
Yeah.
I was on the other end of it, and I got to help give encouragement to somebody else who had just happened to them.
Right.
And they were kind of going through those beginning stages and emotions too.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think she had it as bad as you. Is that what she explained? But
It seemed like over time.
regardless,
I think,
she was feeling the same way. Like, oh my God, is it ever going to get better? I've had it for a few days now, and it just feels weird and all this stuff. So yeah, pretty grateful for that we were able to help them.
Definitely. So that is the Bell's palsy story. So thank you to everyone who was concerned, reaching out to me, offering prayers and thoughts and considerations and and encouragement. So thank you to everyone. But now that season is finally over. It's been over for a few weeks now, but we are kind of got busy with some other things too. But I feel like we're finally getting back on track. We're getting life back together. We've learned lessons about what we can handle and stuff, what I can handle. And so now we kind of readjusted, our reset our course and stuff. And so now we're trying to get back on track. So
Yeah.
it's a big derailment, but at the end of the day, I feel better rested now because of it.
Yeah. I'm like, you can say no.
Yeah. In a way, it was a blessing because I think the only way I would have slowed down is for something like that to happen. And like we said, at that rate, that much stress and stuff, you could end up having an actual stroke or a heart attack or something like that. So literally, I just worked my face off. And that forced me to slow down. And I kind of learned my lesson of hey, you do have limitations.
Yeah.
Just because you feel like you can push yourself and keep staying up late and working on projects and stuff, and you think you can get 48 hours out of a 24-hour day, you can't. Eventually, it's going to catch up with you, and it did to me. So
Yeah.
learned my lesson.
Yeah.
I slowed down after that. And that was helpful for us, too, because we'd done so much partnership on projects and stuff in the beginning of the year that after that happened, we ended up just relaxing together, took a little more time together. And one of the things that we ended up doing a lot, I think, for relaxing is what a lot of couples do, which is we really enjoyed just spending time with each other watching shows and stuff at nighttime.
Yeah, relaxing, literally.
So, yeah, relaxing. Our evenings after we put the kids to sleep, instead of going straight to working on projects and stuff, we would actually spend some time watching shows and stuff together, which was awesome.
Okay, we just watched. I'm into very much documentaries and like crime and true crime, typical woman stuff.
Y'all love true crime and serial killer
True
documentaries.
crime and all these like documentaries, right?
And you'd started watching ones on cult
Yes.
documentaries.
The cult documentaries are so interesting.
I think you're just looking for new ways to like control me or something. I'm just kidding. Effective.
Playing mind tricks on you.
Oh my gosh.
So we watched a cult documentary last night, by the way, and we binged it because it was so good. It's only 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And it's called Dancing for the Devil.
Yo, this was such a trippy.
Wait,
this
tell
was
them.
such a trippy
You're
one.
so good at like breaking down like story, like the plot and all that. So like,
Yeah.
if you're into cult documentaries or any kind of documentary, whatever, you should watch this. It's like, whoa. And
Yeah.
it really, we were at lunch today before filming, and we were talking about it because it was just racking my brain like, oh my God, these kids, these young adults were so vulnerable, and they just got sucked right in, they got their heads brainwashed.
Right, because it looks different than what you typically think of like cults and stuff. When you think of cults, you think of like Jonestown kind of cults. You think about like a leader in
Yeah.
a white robe who like is super hippie, and everyone else is like must just be really weak-minded or something. Like, how could you fall into that?
Yeah.
But this wasn't like that at all. This was a totally different kind of cult than I'd ever heard of. So you want to tell them like the gist of like what it is?
I can't just tell them because like I'm a context person. I want to tell them the whole thing.
Oh, okay. Let me break it down then.
So
So
I'm like going to end up telling all the details.
the gist of it is it follows a few different stories, but there is a main story that follows of this girl who her and her sister are both TikTok dancers. And this was back
The
in like,
Wilking sisters.
The Wilking
The
sisters.
Wilking sisters. Look them up. You'll go down
Yeah.
a rabbit hole because this is where it all started.
so I don't want to spoil too much of it,
Yeah.
but essentially is like these sisters were dancers on TikTok. They ended up in LA meeting other dancers and stuff, getting involved with like other people, like, doing
Starving
content and
artist.
stuff. Right. And through one of their contacts, they met this guy who was a pastor named Pastor Robert.
Shin.
Okay,
Or
what was it?
Robert Shin is his
Robert
name.
Shin, the
Put
cult
him on
leader.
blast.
Still active, by the way. Like, this is not a closed thing. Like, this still exists.
Cancel him.
So he was a pastor who got connected to these TikTok dancers because his son was a videographer and stuff who was filming them and whatnot. And it all became interconnected. And the dancers having problems getting sponsorships.
Yeah.
And so the cult leader, Robert Shin, decided, all right, well, why don't I start a talent agency and we'll go ahead and get sponsorships and stuff for y'all.
And I can make you rich.
And I can make you rich. So it started off as like, okay, well, they just wanted to do it because that sounds great. This guy's going to help us out and stuff. And then through their relationship with him, he started feeding them like verses and stuff from the Bible out of context and saying all these things, which slowly it started off seeming like spiritual mentorship, but quickly turned into just manipulation.
Labor.
Yeah, labor manipulation. But the first step, the first red flag was the cutting off the family stuff. And that's the first thing we're like, that's weird. That's not normal. And
That's what all of them do. Cut off your resources, cut off your family ties so I can get in your brain and control you.
And so basically this guy ended up, yes, he got them lots of contacts, lots of sponsorships, lots of deals, but took more than
At a
50%
cost.
of the money. Yeah. And then also like spiritual manipulation as well, but then went further into it into like, there's things that I know about salvation that's not even in the Bible that no
Y'all.
one else knows. So you have to listen to me. And ooh,
Ooh.
the story, you guys have to watch this
It
documentary.
is so cringe. Like
It's cringe. It's heart-wrenching.
I never get really moved by like true crime or these cult like I'm interested, I'm intrigued. I've always been intrigued on how could somebody psychologically control somebody else? Like how do you do that? How do you do that? That's like I don't even want to say anything else but like it's a skill,
Yeah,
like
oh,
it's
absolutely.
a manipulative trait. And I'm like, how are you so conniving that you can control somebody and get what you want out of it, right?
Yeah.
And so like that to me, because I'm all about like mind and psychology and stuff, so I'm like, I've always been intrigued. And nothing really moves me. I'm always just watching these documentaries and I'm like, man, that's so messed up. And oh my God, I hope they find her. I am reactive that way. But this one, I think because it was so deep into also God and how he twisted so much and like just it broke my heart. I was pissed off. Sorry, I was pissed off at the end of it.
Oh, yeah.
I was so mad that some of the former members of this cult that got out, that were in the interview stuff, pretty much dedicated half of their life to this man, and he just ruined them. Of course, they want everything. They want the power. They want the money you're making for them. They have you run their businesses. And then you're giving, like you said, 50%
or more.
Or more.
Lots of the people so there was the dancers was like the recent part of it, but this cult goes back like 20 years before that.
Yeah, that was crazy.
There was other businesses and real estate and companies and stuff, and that was the case for everyone. He had all these people working for him, and they were giving everything to him, their time and all the profits from all the businesses and everything.
And of course, it turned into favors from the women.
Physical favors.
Favors from the women. We all know what those were. And control. And if you don't do this for me, you're going to go to hell. And like, I was just like baffled. I was so baffled. You got to watch it. It's so gut-wrenching. And what we were talking about at lunch today, they had something in common.
Yeah.
All of these people, whether it was the former members, the current members, they all had something in common. And that was lack of truth.
Yeah.
Spiritual truth. Lack of God.
I mean, the shocking thing to us both was that the main storyline I was following of the two sisters, one of which was not in the cult and was trying desperately to get the other one out, who was just 100% drank the Kool-Aid, was all in, she was like
Miranda
a full-on
Wilking.
believer. Yeah, okay, yeah, right. So Miranda, full-on believer in Pastor Robert, and like full-on followed his everything and had completely disassociated from her family and stuff. But the family seemed like a really good family. When you listen to them, they seemed very involved. They were very involved in their children's life. Great mom, great dad. Not the typical family you would think about of like, oh, you've created kids that would join a cult. There was other people that were in the cult where their backstories of abandonment and stuff, that made sense.
Right.
Like, okay, I could see how you would have fallen into this trap. But the Wilking sisters, with their really strong family life, you wouldn't have thought they'd be the ones who would go in there. And so that kind of raised like these feelings and questions of like, well, if it could happen to them, it could happen to anyone.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that I really caught, I think both of us caught through that they were missing. It was the reason that they were able to get lured into the trap in the first place. Is even though they had good family life, they had good values and stuff, they did not have strong, objective truth, especially when it came to a spiritual sense. They mentioned in the documentary, the parents mentioned that, they weren't really churchgoers. Like when they started talking about Miranda reading the Bible and stuff online,
like,
that's
it's
so
weird.
not her. It's so weird to see her read the Bible. And so there was no objective truth there. So I think the thing that so easily lured them in was that Pastor Robert came in, and he came in as this presence of like authority. He came in as a presence of like, first off, he was going to help them. So he was a resource, first off. I'm helping you with that. And then once they trusted him as a resource, well, then when he started speaking wisdom and things that seemed like deeper spiritual truth, they'd never encountered that before. And so they were able to just eat it up.
Oh my gosh. I'm
And
so mad.
That was the first thing that really caught on to me of like, because it makes you ask yourself, because we both have, our kids, how do we keep our kids from falling into the same trap?
Yeah.
And the first thing that made me think of is make sure that our kids know some objective truth. Make sure they've already experienced and encountered and kind of tested scripture and stuff for themselves. That they've already asked questions, they've gotten to know.
Yes.
Your kids need to be aware of what, especially if you're in a faith-filled Christian house, like what is the objective truth in Christianity?
And you can ask questions and get critical with it, like all of that. All of that, truth, ask questions, get that solid ground. That way, when you are coming into those people, you're like, you can catch it. You're like, I don't know if that's right,
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, what do you got, with the dangling carrot in front of you. And it just it really rattled us to the point where we're questioning, okay, how can our kids, like, how do you teach discernment? You can't teach that. You can't teach that. And discernment meaning like pointing out like who's fake and like who's BSing and like, all this stuff. Like, how do you teach that? Because as kids, as teenagers, as young adults, you're going to constantly try to seek like what your purpose is. You're going through your identity, like where do I fit in? What is my place in the world? And you're going to want to fit in, especially, I told Charlie, I was like, our kids one day, they're going to want to follow their dreams. 21, 18, and they're going to want to go off and into the sunset. How do you equip them to point out those situations and like run from them?
Yeah.
Because that's what happened. These sisters, Miranda, at whatever age, I forgot, she went to LA to pursue her dream, like to become a dancer. And that's where you become a dancer, is the TikTok dancers. And this all happened during the pandemic, like 2020, when all the dancing was starting to get popular and stuff. And she left. She still talked to her mom every single day. Her parents, she had a great relationship with them every day, all the exciting wins, all that stuff. But as soon as she encountered this group, she started to be manipulated and brainwashed and like cut off and isolated from her family. And that to me is just so scary. Like obviously I pray and pray and pray that like our kids never would have to encounter that. Or if they did, they would know, hey, nah, I ain't falling for it.
I think you're right about that, because it's like the question you asked, like how do you teach discernment? And like it's hard to teach, like, because some people are just trusting. I think I'm normally a bit on the trusting side, but I'd say there's one advantage that I have as a trusting person though, and it's this, like the thing that there's a trend with all cult leaders, doesn't matter what cult it is, all cult leaders have many things in common, but a very common one is charisma.
Yes.
And speaking.
They're charming.
They're charming. They know how to speak. So to me, one of the main things, like if you can't teach discernment, teach this. Teach what a good communicator does.
Yes.
Because there is a pattern. Anyone who is like into like TED Talks and stuff like that, you start to pick up on the pattern of what a good speaker does. You start to pick up on certain things like how they structure their messaging, how they have highs and emotional lows and stuff, how they can bring a room down with a real soft voice, how they can really eject a stronger voice on certain points that inspires confidence. And I feel like I learned a lot of this. Part of it was through like in school, like Toastmasters and stuff, like watching stand-up comedy, but also being in multiple churches and stuff and hearing multiple speakers, multiple teachers, you start picking up on these things. And there is a skill to charisma. There's a skill to public speaking. And so if you can learn to dissect those things and teach that to your kids as well, what they're hearing, why it's inspirational, like there's a science to it. There's a structure to it.
Of course.
And these cult leaders know those things. They know how to structure their speeches, their words, into inspiration.
Yes. Yes.
And being able to identify that, that's the best BS meter I think I could possibly
Babe, that
have.
is such a good point when you said that today. I'm like, yes, that is it. Because no matter what, not even with religious people or pastors, it's everybody and anybody in authority over in your job, at school, your friends, the leader of your little friend group, like, no, because they all got a way of like how to talk to people, like you said. And I'm like, I thought that was such a good point.
Because
you can filter anybody through that.
Yes, you can, because professional speakers, they'll have the exact same speech, and they go from city to city to city to city. They do the exact same speech. And at every point in the speech, there's a point where the audience will like cheer and applaud, and it's the exact same in every single town. And that's because they know the art of public speaking. They know how to get those emotional responses. If you're a good speaker, you can do it. So I would say this to all parents, in addition to like the regular things you do for raising your kids well, if you want to keep your kids out of cults and stuff, you need to teach your kids the art of public speaking and just being able to identify what those highs and lows are. So when they're hearing it, they're not just taken into the speech, but they can listen to it and go, I kind of caught what you did there. Like,
Yeah.
that's not so much a praise break as an applause break. Like,
Yes. Oh my God. And I think that's an advantage that you have because you've been in church like your whole entire life. You've been through pastors and you've heard different sermons and you're able to. It's almost like you're predicting, okay, like right there, he's going to ask for a praise break. And it happens. You can see it coming and it happens. And I'm like, I kind of got used to it too. I'm like, I'm not really moved because like I've heard this before. I've heard this kind of cadence, right? Like it's like a song, like, you know, the emotional like waves of a song, you know, it's the same thing with speeches.
Right.
You know, like you said, the highs and the lows and they're really soft and like trying to get you like sentimental.
No, exactly. I think being able to identify those things is so strongly will keep you from getting, you know, suckered into things like, and I'm not going to like, this isn't to hate on public speakers and stuff, because I love public speaking. I'm a big fan of like the talent and the art that goes into it. I myself, I love doing public speaking and stuff. But because I'm passionate about it, I know how it works, I know the cadence and stuff, I can listen to it and I can appreciate the message without feeling like I'm helpless to the direction you're trying to take me. You know what I mean? Like I can listen, I can be inspired, I can be encouraged, but I'm in control of that situation because I'm listening to your words and I'm not just falling into the cadence of a very skilled professional communicator.
Yeah.
And I think if you have that training at a young age, you can start to identify those things, know where it's coming from. I'd say probably pastors' kids are the most cult-proof kids in the world.
For real.
Pastors' kids are 100% the least likely to ever fall
so
into
funny.
a cult because they're used to hearing their parents and stuff, and they're used to other people
Hearing them practice it.
Yeah, they're used to other people like admiring their parents for it. They're sitting there going like, "Yeah, I heard my dad do this, rehearsing this and stuff." So like they know it, they know the cadence and stuff. But that's a powerful thing for protecting your own kids is
Not to
teaching
be
them those
easily
things.
influenced.
Don't be easily influenced.
And
listen to the words, listen to the message. Yeah.
no, that's so good. That's such a good point. But also too, along with that is, you know, continuing to be in their lives, interactive with them, calling, texting, being present.
Yeah.
You know, and if you watch the documentary, they will start saying like how to navigate those situations as a parent. Like, okay, do you, how far do you go? Like, you know, because these parents, the Wilking sisters' parents, are just continually they're to this day still fighting for her to get out, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like, but the more you push, you know, the cult leaders are like pushing back.
Yep.
So the more you like, hey, let me get you out, they're like, I knew it. You're trying to get me out of this thing, and they said you were going to do that. So I need to cut you off again. Don't talk about it when, you know, I visit because I will cut you off. This is my life now. And so it's like, what is that balance, like that push and pull? But as a parent, I will never stop fighting for my kids.
I think
ever.
if
Like
we were in
whatever
that
I
situation,
have to do. And it would be so hard not to like act on like physical beatings. But
if you've ever seen the movie Law Abiding Citizen, those were the emotions I was feeling last night as I was watching it, thinking about
just like
what would happen if our kids were in that situation. Because I don't think I could deal with that without resorting to some kind of violence.
Yeah.
I could not deal with someone just like controlling my kids and feeling helpless. Like I would be like, all right, so we're going to kidnap him at dawn then, right? And then we're
yeah. Bring a bat.
bring him back.
But,
yeah, I couldn't,
you know.
I don't know how you would help that, but yeah, I would definitely want a law-abiding citizen, that guy for sure.
You just like, it just really rattled us. And I think those things are important to almost like watch those documentaries. And that's probably like why I watch them, because like, and what I've learned a lot from them, you know, like narcissism and like just people like being coy with other people and, getting what they want and like these cult leaders. And I'm like, I don't know. Like I'm a pretty good like BS reader on people. And I don't want to say it's because I watched those documentaries. I'm just saying like, I'm just so into like, what is your intention? What are your motives? Like I'm always questioning people, and I do trust you. Until you mess up or like I see some kind of like, I just watch behavior. That's just it. Like, I'm watching behavior, like how you move, how you navigate, how you're talking to people, like how you're treating people. And even at a friend's house and we're having a party, I'm watching how you're like, getting attention or like your conversations. What kind of conversations are you having? How are you moving with, if you're even with a spouse or something, like how I'm just always like on alert and watching people.
That's true. Even apart from.
And so I think that's probably another thing too, is just be self-aware. Yeah. And like always ask yourself what people's intentions and motives are. Like, but why do you want me to do this? Or why are you doing this? Or like, okay, what's the reason you want me to come over? Or, well, what's the benefit for me? And the thing about the cult leaders is that obviously they can't kidnap you and like keep you in the house.
Right.
I mean, some do, maybe, I don't know. But I'm saying like this guy gave them an opportunity, invited them, and if they didn't want to go, if they didn't want to join, then they left.
Yeah.
So
the ones who stuck around though, he identified as ones who were vulnerable, and those are the ones who ended up joining the cult because they're not going to get 100% of everyone they try to come in contact with. But
because both sisters did go. Well, Miranda went first, then she invited her sister, Melanie. And Melanie was like, this is weird, but I'll go support you. And I'm just not really, she was very critical.
She smelled something on the situation for sure.
And then so she went and she's like, this ain't for me. And then she left. She's like, I will never go back there again.
Yep.
And so having that strong will, that is another thing too, is our littlest one has the strongest will ever.
Oh my gosh.
And
immovable.
Immovable. And I try to not, in certain situations, like, no, I have authority. Like, I'm your mom and you need to listen.
Yeah.
But in some situations, I let her have that strong will and I try to cultivate that trait in her because it's important.
Yeah,
because if you don't have strong will, you're easily influenced. And especially if you have a kid or you are a kid or you are young or whatever, you just like, you're trying to fit in or like, you're going to be peer pressured, all that stuff. I know our little one, she's not going to have any trouble with that. And I'm not saying our oldest one is, because, they both have strong wills to a certain degree. But I do try to cultivate that. I do try to let them like have a voice, at what's appropriate at their age,
Absolutely.
And even if, I let them also protect each other. Like if I'm giving a punishment to one kid, like timeout or a pow or whatever, the other one's like, Mommy, why'd you do that? Like, you need to say sorry. And I'm like, you know what, baby? Okay. Like, well, I did it because that wasn't right. But I will say sorry, and make sure you have that balance. But anyway, that's another topic about discipline and parents and stuff. But anyway, I do try to let them protect each other.
Yeah.
And even to me, like as an adult, I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right.
And that's one thing when I see look at the Wilkins sister and stuff. Like that's what the older one was trying, or whichever one.
The younger one, Melanie, was trying to
just
protect
like our younger
her.
one, yeah. Had the BS meter and was trying to get the other one out.
Yeah,
but
I was just like,
the other one just ended up falling victim to it. I would say there was one other thing I think I would want to convey to our kids on like a BS meter or something. Or really, it doesn't necessarily go to a cult leader. This is more of like identifying a person who probably has more narcissistic tendencies. I'm not going to straight up say that this person's a narcissist, because that label can get thrown around, but at least like a narcissistic tendency. And it goes back to what you were saying when you were like, I'm always watching people, seeing what people do and stuff. I think one of the main things that I do whenever I'm meeting people and getting to know people and stuff is if I'm having a conversation with somebody, I like to see in that conversation, like, I'm going to ask you lots of questions about you, and I'm going to let you answer all those questions. But I am watching on like, how many repeat questions do you ask me?
like to get to know me.
Yes, I remember there was a party we went to together, and there was a guy that I met at that party who was a boyfriend of someone else there, and then talking to him and stuff. And I literally spent the whole hour and a half there talking to this guy, and he was talking about himself the entire time. I could probably count on one hand how many questions he asked me about myself.
Yeah.
It was just like I'd ask him a question,
Cringe.
and now he'd answer it, and now would kind of just spaghetti into other topics about himself and stuff. And at the end of the party, like, what'd you think about that guy? And I was like, I didn't like that guy at all. It's like I mean, he's that guy. Like, he wasn't mean or anything, but literally, I could tell. Like, he did not ask me anything
Conceited.
about myself. I could tell he was very much about himself, and he was
Yeah.
constantly talking about himself. And I think that's a big red flag. Something I want to teach our kids and stuff as they're growing up is they're identifying in a conversation. Like, hey, when you're talking to somebody, how much of it is about them? How much are they asking you about yourself? And kind of making not a judgment about a person, but at least like
Like a self-awareness.
a self-awareness about, hey, who this person could be and how much faith or trust you should put into them.
Yes, that's important.
That's an important thing, because sometimes those people who talk about themselves end up being very charismatic. They can be very inspirational. You start hearing things, they talk about themselves. Oh my gosh, that's exciting. And some of it's almost like, oh wow, that guy's doing really cool stuff. Like, I want to keep talking to this guy. But keep in mind how much they're asking about you and how much interested they are in you. And that'll kind of give you a gauge on like, what would this relationship or friendship actually be?
Yep.
You know?
And how they treat people.
And how they treat people. Oh, that's such a huge one. How they treat other people.
What is their reputation? And I know that, like, obviously this cult leader in this documentary, you know, that, oh, he's great, you know, he's like encouraging, he's motivation, he knows God and stuff. But then he started saying like, well, I know things that God doesn't know.
Or I
And it
know
was-
things that aren't in the Bible. Like,
Yeah, I
he
know
said
things that aren't in the Bible
he
that
said
God
these
doesn't
things
even
that
know.
Jesus didn't know. Like, it was real strong things. He was identifying himself as like,
God.
He called himself man of God, and everyone else called him man of God. For the record, if I ever met any pastor or religious authority figure who identified themselves as man of God,
Right?
I would be out of there. No way.
Heck
If you
no.
are putting yourself on a pedestal,
Yes.
I am out.
Period.
I want to follow the leader who's constantly trying to take himself off the pedestal.
Yes.
Not putting himself on. No way. If you are
But you
calling
better
yourself
preach.
man of God, I'm out. I would
Yeah.
say the same thing to our kids. If you are in any kind of church or organization or leadership where they are putting themselves on this pedestal,
Out.
where they're above other people for any reason, out, gone.
Yep.
Absolutely
Yep.
not.
Yep.
That is not a
Absolutely.
person to follow.
Absolutely.
The person you want to follow is, I mean, this goes back to like general like leadership stuff and whatnot, is like, I saw this like depiction of like, there's a picture of a leader who's sitting on like a carriage with a whip and people are pulling him. And like, that's not a leader.
Right.
That's like a master figure. But then there was a picture underneath that there was a person who was at the front pulling the large load behind them. So he was at the very front and everyone else was behind him. They were all pulling something together. That's the leader.
Yep.
The one who's doing the work
work.
with you, holds themselves to the same standards that they hold you to,
Yep.
even hold themselves to a higher standard.
Yep.
But not in a way that puts them on a pedestal, in a way that gives them responsibility.
Yep. Absolutely, baby.
That's who
Absolutely.
you want to follow. No cult leader. You'll never find a cult leader doing that.
I think that's an advantage that we had that maybe these people didn't have, you know, like they didn't grow up in church or like, you know, they didn't have that guidance.
Or even just like basically leadership classes and stuff. Like, it doesn't even have to be church leadership, even
Yeah.
business leadership and stuff, but like real, true leadership experience, just anything that'll give you an inkling or context of who you should follow.
Yeah, and I think that's why, because we have been in leadership positions. Like, we have experienced it, we've witnessed it, we've been under a leader, we have been a leader. We've been in the whole, like, line, right? We've been a follower, you know, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think our kids have the best example. Because, like,
I mean, I'm going to go ahead and put myself on a pedestal here. I'm just kidding.
but yeah, like you said, like, you know, I think you can really get that sense when you volunteer in an organization, not
Yeah.
just a seat, like not your 9 to 5, right? Because like that's a structure, right? You have your boss, you have your assistant manager, and then like you have all the minions, right? But
Yeah.
like I'm saying, if you volunteer, right, somewhere, giving your time, you're going to experience different type of leadership because when you volunteer at an organization, some of these leaders have that I'm in control and you're here for free, so I'm going to get you to do what you want, what I need you to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like the best way you can probably experience different type of leadership is when you volunteer somewhere.
That is true. That's definitely where I got to see a lot of my experience on different kinds of leadership
Yes.
models and stuff is serving under different leaders and identifying, like being able to see now who are the ones that are trying to get you to do stuff for them and the leaders who are trying to do the most for those who are following them.
Yeah.
And leading by example. And that's what you really want.
Yeah. Being in those positions, like you'll get to see different leadership types and like you'll know when people are taking advantage of you. You will know when people are taking advantage. You're like, it doesn't feel right. You feel overworked or like you feel like you're not being appreciated or you feel like you don't have a voice or you feel like they're too demanding or, but then you have these leaders that are literally side by side doing the work with you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's who I want to. Like, yeah, you should. Like, so anyway.
I would say that documentary, like, it spurred that conversation in us, which is why we're talking about it here, because it really made us evaluate, again, what was it that made these kids susceptible? How would we deal with the same situation and stuff? And then what do we teach our kids about people and leaders to keep them out of those situations?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So important. Anyways, y'all should go watch it and tell us in the comments like what you thought about it. I would love to like have a conversation to see what y'all's perspective is.
And if you are a cult leader, we would love for you to contact us. We'd love to have you on.
I want to know what you're doing and why you're doing it and why are you thinking the way you think.
Or if you found yourself in a cult, yeah, go ahead and comment. We'd love to have you on. Just talk about that experience.
No, seriously, it like we're joking and stuff, but this is some serious stuff.
Yeah.
Like there was a little bit of essay in there, and it's just like no. And I remember a point looking at Charlie, I'm like, why are women so vulnerable? Like we're the most vulnerable species in the planet Earth. I'm not disregarding anything that happens to males and stuff. I'm just saying like I just felt so bad for this one woman and my heart literally just broke for her. Cause she just like kind of looked back and you're like, I just wasted half of my life giving the best years of my life to somebody to enjoy his.
It was brutal.
Brutal. Anyway, but yeah, I think those were really good points.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought those were really good points. It was a really good conversation. It was like, it was good to like realize and think about again and really gives us perspective for, raising our own kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So I think that caps us on time. So thank you everybody for joining in this week. And we look forward to getting back on a regular posting schedule again on Fridays is the goal.
Fridays.
All right. Later, guys.
Bye. Oh, I want to try that new ice cream place.
I want to watch some more cult documentaries.
Ice cream and cold?
Ice cream and cult documentaries.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right, go on.